General. One of the main objectives of content management is that a company can maintain its website on the internet while being integrated with the rest of the business management. So we can automate processes in order to create, to approve, or to build any type of procedure in order to publish or delete the contents in our sites. So we could create a site for news articles, for opinions, for documents, for videos, for whatever we want. And once this cycle has been processed, the content is going to be published on the website. Then users don't have to do anything because this is all taken care of by the process. Here we can see an example where we have a website and there's different contents displayed, and there's an approval process where maybe someone prepares the content, afterwards there's an approval. If the content is approved, there's a system test that automatically publishes the content on the website. On that moment, the users can start seeing this content. Later on, if we want, we can also delete the content off of the website. We can remove it automatically, maybe after some time or because someone modifies a value in the record of that content. So as it says here, the contents can appear and disappear due to human interaction or automated processes. For example, if there's no stock of a certain product, it can automatically disappear from the web. We don't need to have someone indicating on the website that that content needs to be removed. It's just automatic. It doesn't meet the conditions, so automatically it won't appear. Surely we've all seen lots of websites where data or documents are displayed. For example, Amazon, Google Play, the Auto Quantic Trading Portal, the knowledge base. So in all these sites, we have something in common. We're displaying contents. In order to display these contents, we need some features. For example, we need to be able to program the content publishing. So there's some sites that even though they create all their content maybe during the morning, they want to program when it's actually going to be published. We want to know which are the contents that are most seen. We want to know the statistics of the contents. We want these contents to have security. Maybe some people can access the contents, other people can't. We want to have a shopping cart, for example, to purchase products that are displayed, so contents that are displayed on our site. Maybe we want to build very well-defined processes to manage the publication and the removal of all the different contents that we have in our site. We might want it to be in different languages. We might want to be able to access with different devices and so on. So we're going to see that the feature, well, all of these features and many more are included in this part of the platform that allows us to publish these contents and display them on different sites. To manage content, we have to carry out a series of steps that are common in any project. So these are basically the steps that we have to follow. We have to identify and organize our data. For example, if we're going to sell products, we need to have a price, we need to have an article or a product, whatever. We need to have some pictures, some photos of that product, maybe an audio file, a video file, or whatever. And all of this data needs to be stored somewhere. So we're going to need data storage. We're going to see during this course that the contents are going to be stored in a family of records that's called content management. And we can actually create it, delete it, or modify it manually with human intervention, directly accessing these records, or even through processes or data imports. These things are explained in other courses. So here we're not going to explain how to build a process to create an element or to delete an element. We're not going to explain how to import data into a family of records. These are all things that are explained in other courses. Right now, we're just going to focus on displaying the data on a site. So before displaying the data on the site, we need to think about how the user would like to see the data. So do they need to download the information? Do they, I don't know, maybe they have to access a payment gateway in order to purchase a product, or maybe they need a search option because there's so many articles or products on our site. So what problems do they need to solve? What can be done to help them? So in this step, we need to decide, we need to analyze how we're going to display the data based on the user's needs. Okay, so now that we know we have some data, we can store it somewhere, and we know how we want to display it somewhere, we need to create specific spaces where we can display or publish these contents. Okay, so now we have to develop. Here I'm going to say develop, although we don't need to code anything. We need to create or develop the data presentation, taking into account the types of data, how and where it's stored, and how the user wants to see it. So first, we're going to design the content management family to store the data. Then we're going to create some templates to define how this data is going to be displayed. Then we're going to create some pages that can display these templates with the data. And then maybe we're going to want to define some permissions to view, create, edit, delete, and develop a process to automate the content management elements. But anyways, we're not going to enter this part. We're not going to talk about processes because this is something that's explained in other courses. Then finally, obviously, we want to analyze the results. As always, when we create something, we want to know what are the user's comments, their ratings, or maybe we're going to have to run some tests. We're going to have to analyze. We're going to have to take into account the customer's feedback. And based on that, we can always improve the results. When we want to start configuring our content management sites, the first thing we want to do is enter structure and go to this option that's called Content Management General. So I'm going to click here on General, and it's going to take me to this window. And here we have a few options. We're going to explain them now. The first thing we have to make sure is that here we have selected the family Content Management. This is the data repository where the data is going to be extracted from. So I'm going to pull the information from this data repository and I'm going to display it on my sites. The next thing I need to do is indicate what field in my records of content management I'm going to use to indicate if an item, if an element should be published or not. So by default, we should always select a field that's already created by default. It's called published. It's a yes/no field. Although later on we can modify this and select a different one. But we do have to make sure that whatever we're selecting here is what we're actually going to be using to condition what is published and what is not published. Later on, we can also add additional conditions. So this would be the main condition for something to be published, but we could create additional conditions. For example, if the price goes up, if the price goes down, then it disappears. If we change a category, then it's going to be displayed in a different site. You know, there's all kinds of other conditions that we can set up, and we'll see this later on. We can also indicate a field that we have in our record of our family of content management that we can use as a hit counter. So each time someone visits this content, we want to store the information inside of the record so we know how many visits this content has. And finally, there's an option called login form where we can select the login form that's going to be displayed if we're creating pages or sites that require credentials in order to access. So we can have public sites that anyone can access. We don't need to have a user. Or we could create private areas where you need to actually, drop in your user and your password. This could be an employee, it could be an external user. Or if there's no credentials required, well, if it's public, then you don't need to go through a login form. But anyways, whatever login form we select here is going to be the default login form that's going to be displayed when someone tries to enter a password protected site. The next thing I'm going to mention is that all these contents can be categorized, classified, and organized. So we've already seen this in a lot of other features that we have in the platform where we can create our branches and there we can, start storing our contents. Well, here it's the same. If we're going to create a page, we're going to create a template or any other content, we can always classify it. So later on, it's easier to find. So here we can see that the main way of classifying our information is going to be using a tree. So we can create all these different categories, and in each one of these chapters, we can lodge our contents. So as a quick demonstration, I'm going to enter the application and I'm going to go to Family of Records. I'm going to enter this content management family of records. And I'm going to click proceed. And here I can see I've got different records with information. So I've got animation, comedy, fiction. Let's open fiction, for example. I've got 10 different movies. Each one of these have their images, their category, their start date, if they're published, yes or no. So this is all the data that I have here in my data repository, but I don't want to display this data like this to an end user. Okay, this might be okay for the internal users, for the employees that are working in the company and generating the data, or for the processes to automatically populate this data. So this is my data repository, my database where I store all the data, but I want to display this in a different way. So even though I've created this, this way of displaying my data internally, I can always go here to structure, and I can go to pages and I can create a page. For example, here we have an example of a page, and if I click here on preview, I can see the result of this page. Later on, we're going to learn how to do all of this, so don't worry about it. So I click on preview, and here I can see the result. So basically, I'm displaying all these contents on this page, and they're displayed, for example, with a poster of the movie, with a little bit of the description or the entire description. So here we can set up how much text we want to display. And then I can even drill down through the information. For example, if I click here on Hotel Transylvania, it takes me to the detailed page where I can see more information, like the movie trailer, I don't know, the description of the movie, the price, if we want to purchase the movie. This is just a very quick example that I've created so we can see how we're displaying the data in a totally different way for an end user. So I'm going back to see the data repository. So I'm going back to family of records. I'm going back to content management. And here I can see my movies, for example, comedy, or I can see my animation movies. And here, for example, I can see this movie. It's called Hotel Transylvania. And in my data repository, the information is displayed like this. Okay, this would be the poster. Here I can pop in the start date and all the data I want for this record. But later on, when I'm displaying the information to an end user, I'm actually displaying it in a very different way. So we're going to learn how to create these pages, how to display these contents by using templates. And we're also going to learn a little bit about how to store the data in our content management family. Exercise 404, Part 1.